Hello and welcome here to the second episode of the Gerry Leeds United show. I'm joined this evening by Shaun and James and Debbie. We're going to have a wee
Good
chat, obviously
evening.
look ahead to the big game tomorrow night against Newcastle. Both sides coming into the game not really in great form. We're not in great form, they're in worse form. So we played what was a little over a month ago, about 6 weeks ago, and we beat them 5-2, which was obviously a great result. So, Shaun, what's your thoughts on the game? Or are you thinking that we could get back to winning ways and get that elusive 2021 goal?
I'd be disappointed if we don't, if I'm brutally honest with you. I think that the predicted or expected changes to the most recent teams, with Calvin coming back into the team, will be really good news for us. I think it's plain to see that how much we miss him when he's not available, when he's not playing. I think the square peg in round hole experiment that we perhaps sometimes opt for clearly doesn't work in certain games, and we lose a lot of impetus, I think, with having the likes of Luke Ayling playing centre back. I expect to see Llorente playing tomorrow night. Luke Ayling back at right back, Dallas probably back at left back, with Calvin sitting in front of them. And given that, I would expect us to win the game quite comfortably. As I said, I'd be really disappointed if we don't, because let's be honest about it. I think personally, they're probably the poorest team I've seen us play this season, including West Brom, if I'm honest with you. Not anybody else thinks of that.
What would you say yourself, Debbie? Do you think it's a good opportunity to get 3 points?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've really got to bounce back and try and get 3 points tomorrow night. I don't see why we can't. Like Shaun said, with Calvin back, obviously that's a massive boost for us. And I just think we need to go there, attack, and just get the 3 points and on his way home.
Yeah, definitely. I think we start on the front foot, Gerry. Do you think we, sometimes you can tell, I personally feel within that first sort of 5 or 10 minutes of a game, kind of how it's going to go. We always need to start on that front foot. And I think, doing that tomorrow, they're obviously a very defence-minded team, the way they set up. I think we start on the front foot, push them back. That will see us, see us good for the rest of the game. I generally feel that.
No, I agree. I think that, the more positive we are, the better we look, and the better it tends to be. Like the game against Brighton there, I missed the first half. I was actually on my way home from work, but I got home about half an hour into the game, and I was listening to the game on the radio, and it just sounded terrible. But obviously, the way we start, what's your thoughts yourself, James? Do you think it's 3 points tomorrow night, or do you think like we keep the points tally taking over? Would a point be the worst result, or is it really we need 3?
I think games like Newcastle, no disrespect, they're probably the games that you've got to be going and winning, to be fair. They're not winning 10 games. I know usually with us that usually spells trouble for us, because teams go and beat us at that stage. But as Shaun and Debbie have both said, I can't see any reason why we shouldn't be beating Newcastle tomorrow night. They haven't got really what I'd call an out-and-out threat. Probably their biggest threat is Andy Carroll, which obviously is good in the air, and that's where we struggle with set pieces. As long as we can sort of nullify that, I think in open play, I don't think they'll trouble us, to be honest.
No.
I think it's an interesting point that you mentioned Andy Carroll, because obviously, as has been alluded to there, there's a possibility that Llorente will make his first start for Leeds tomorrow night. And the one sort of problem that I can think of is, like, a lot of the time European centre backs aren't used to dealing with a threat like Andy Carroll. Like, it's the reason why Andy Carroll, every time an international tournament comes around, like, it's always like, the England stick Andy Carroll in the squad, because he's something different. So, do you think he is the main threat, or would you be more concerned about Callum Wilson, James?
Callum Wilson's obviously got a lot of pace and can get in behind defenders, which, again, if we're not on our guard, and as Shaun said, too many square pegs in round holes with Ayling at centre half, and obviously you've got Stuart Dallas playing anywhere really, and Alioski as a left back, which probably is not really his natural position. Just talking of your Llorente point, although sort of the physical side of Andy Carroll he might struggle with, actually in the air, what I have seen of Llorente, obviously in the game with Chelsea, only the 23s and a couple of games for Spain, he's actually looked very strong in the air, which probably would make sense to put him on the pitch tomorrow night and have him man marking against Carroll, because I do honestly think that will be the biggest threat. Certainly, Callum Wilson playing off him. If you can stop that service into Wilson, again, I think you probably stop their biggest threat.
With Andy Carroll, say, as you're saying there, but Diego Llorente, it was interesting to see Bielsa's comments earlier. Shaun, he was saying about that Llorente was, he thought that he was going to be a real aerial presence, and he was going to help with the set plays. Obviously, I think his goal, I think if I remember right, he scored the goal in the under-23s game was a header as well. So,
yeah,
do you think that will be Andy Carroll in mind, that he'll be in the team?
I think personally, Bielsa sets up how he wants to play, and I think he picks a team without giving too much consideration to the opposition. And I think, as he mentioned in his podcast, in his briefing today, that he will set up he's more concerned about his own team setup than he is anybody else's. I don't know if Andy Carroll will play. I don't think any of us will know. I did read today that is it Maximum, the guy that's been out for some time, is kind of 50-50. He's not quite
he's back
ready yet.
Now, isn't he?
Yeah. I think he's played he may have come on as a sub recently. I don't, to be honest with you, watch all of their games, but I think he'll be on the bench tomorrow. And I think, in all honesty, the way that we set up, perhaps he would be him and Callum Wilson would be a bigger threat than Andy Carroll. I think Andy Carroll, yes, he's going to win a few headers, but you challenge people in the air properly, and they've got to create that chance for him to score, haven't they? And I don't think that sort of team that can create those sort of chances. I'd be more concerned with Maximum playing alongside Callum Wilson than I would do if Andy Carroll was playing.
Yeah.
Just interesting about the two. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, to say just about the two strikers, because usually if they play with Carroll and Wilson, or whether they play with Wilson and Maximum, we always tend to play with three centre halves when a team plays with two up front. Well, I actually think we lose our best shape when we do that. I think we're actually better when we've got Calvin in the midfield screening that defence, rather than, because for me he's the best passer in the team, and you take his ability away when you play him at centre half. But you can be sure that if they do play two strikers, we will play three centre halves, and I do think that's when we lose our passing game, and that's when we lose a bit of guile.
Calvin tends to sit in between the two centre halves, doesn't he? And but I think the positive element of that is it then allows we see more and more of Luke Ayling and whoever's playing at left back. We see Stuart Dallas kind of pushing into that midfield and narrowing that element of it, and then obviously you've got the width from the two wingers. I do get your point though, James. He's a quality passer of the ball. He's Calvin, and he always tends to look forward, and he does ping those balls out to the wide boys that we haven't seen in the last couple of the games that he hasn't played in that central role.
I was just going to say, the Brighton game last week.
Yeah.
They're saying the Brighton game last week was the same thing. How many times did we play the long ball? I've not seen us do that for such a long time. Obviously, it was just literally bypassing the midfield. I mean, everyone was criticising Rodrigo and Rafinha for that game. Yeah, it wasn't their best game, but you've got to get them on the ball to see the best side of them. Kicking it over their head for 90 minutes, you're not going to see their qualities.
No.
So I've been having a wee look at it since Newcastle played against us. Obviously, the record is 2 draws and 5 defeats in the league. Plus, they've been knocked out by Brentford and Arsenal in the cup, so they're not coming in good form. I had a look. They've played 2 strikers in 3 of the games, and 1 striker in 6 of the games. I think that will be a big turning point. And as James said, the fact whenever we play against 2 strikers, we go with 3 at the back, and I 100% agree with what he's saying about whenever Calvin goes back into defence, we lose something. My wee theory is that whenever he goes back into defence, and you've obviously still have Rodrigo, and he's, his sort of mantra is try to support Bamford as much as possible. And I think it leaves Click really isolated. So, like, what's your thoughts on it, Debbie? Would you agree that the back three is not really our way?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you guys have said, I mean, Calvin, the last few games, obviously before he was suspended, were outstanding for us. Obviously, massive missed him against Brighton. Yeah, I think that's the way we've got to go, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take the same result from 6 weeks ago.
Absolutely. I think we'd all just happily. Do you know what? I would take 1-0. I just get 3 points on the board and take the pressure off a wee bit.
Yeah, totally.
So with our team, then they were talking about. It looks like Misley is going to be fit again. I know personally, I would have him straight back in the team. Would you say, Shaun, is there any reason that Casilla might continue in goal?
No.
No.
Yeah. And anybody who knows me knows that I have never been a fan of Kiko's. Never. I was fortunate enough back in the days, many years ago, to play football at a decent level as a goalkeeper. And I know I'm light years away from being a professional goalkeeper, even back then. But there's always something about him that from day one made me nervous. From day one, I remember I was at Rotherham, I think it was, when he made his debut, and I was with a few people. I just felt then that there's something about him. I see it very typically European continental type goalkeeper, and there was something about him I didn't particularly like then. And I know he's had his good games for us, and he's had some terrible games for us. But the answer is no. There's no way Meslier should not be playing tomorrow, in my opinion.
Would there be any argument for their debut there?
No argument whatsoever.
No, I think we all agree. It's just Bielsa can be a bit thrown, and if he decides that he doesn't like that people have criticised Casilla or doesn't like that he's criticised, he could very well be between the sticks. But I think I don't think there's too many Leeds fans would want Casilla to be starting. Like I would watch a lot of Spanish football, and like a lot of the people talk about, he's a ex-Real Madrid goalkeeper, but like he was really an ex-Real Madrid reserve. He didn't really play very much for Real Madrid. He was kind of like he really made his name at Espanyol, and then he went and basically was a backup at Real Madrid for a while. Played the odd cup game and stuff, but he's just not like my dad in particular. My dad always hated him. Like he's just, as soon as he's just like, that's not a goalkeeper. The old-fashioned thoughts. That's catch the ball, command your area, don't worry about but playing out and stuff like so. Yeah. So what would you say, James? Do you think there will be any surprises in the lineup tomorrow? I know there was a wee bit of sort of worry online over the weekend that Rafinha wasn't seen in a training session or something, and people thought he was going to be dropped. So do you think it'll just be more or less the same team as usual, or do you see anything different?
Obviously, starting with the keeping situation again, I'm just the same as you and probably majority of Leeds fans. There's no reason why Meslier shouldn't be back in goal tomorrow night. I'm on the same as Shaun, really, from day one with Kiko. He's always frightening me. He doesn't seem confident, and you always tell the defence don't seem the same when Kiko plays as well. You can probably, between us now, we could pick out 20, 30 mistakes. So there really is that many that have led to goals in the last couple of years. I'll probably just pick out two of them. There was Brentford away last year. He had nothing to do other than one back pass that was rolled to him. He made a mistake for the goal. And the one that still haunts me is Cardiff at home. Just before Christmas, 15 months ago, 14 months ago, sorry, when we was winning 3-0. They didn't have a shot on goal. They did nothing. And he made a mistake coming out for a cross, 18-yard box. They made it 3-1. And as you know, from there, that kind of changed the game, and they got themselves back and made it 3-3. And I think it's the typical European goalkeeper, without being stereotypical. If he's got nothing to do, he has to find something to do, get himself involved where he doesn't need to. And obviously 9 times out of 10, that leads to a goal. And again, the game against Crawley, the fortnight ago, the less we say about that, the better. Because I thought he should have done better with all 3 goals, personally.
Absolutely.
Certainly 2 of them.
Yeah, totally agree.
In terms of actually the rest of the team, Rafinha doesn't play. It will be interesting to see who does start there. I know, sort of in the start of the season, Costa started really well the first 3 or 4 games, and as soon as they signed Rafinha, he just seemed to lose his way. It's like he's throwing the towel in, and it seems that Paveda seems to be above him in the rankings at the moment. So maybe if Rafinha isn't playing, Paveda could be the surprise starter tomorrow night. Equally, Hernandez has played left, right, number 10, so maybe he can come out and play out wide if Rafinha doesn't play, but it all depends. Personally, if Rafinha's fit, then I'll start him tomorrow night because he has got that bit of spark that we haven't got really.
I've not seen any news about him being unfit. Gerry, where did that come from then? Was that just a?
I think it could have been a pure paranoia thing on somewhere online. It was they were showing, I think they had like an open training session or something, and there was a load of photos, and Rafinha wasn't in them, so a lot of people thought there could be a possibility that he's injured, so it was something that was like, maybe you're talking maybe Friday, so he could have been photographed since then, on what James says, even the Cardiff game with Kiko, and I think even like that game, like I think we had won like 5 or 6 in a row at the time. 3-0 up, you're thinking that's another win, cruising, keeping going towards the top. And that comeback, that sparked a real downfall as well. Like, it wasn't even just that game. It was like we went then a few games without winning as well. So yeah, I think it is like you kind of try and ride the confidence, and he doesn't inspire confidence in me. So another player I wanted to talk about is he seems to be getting such in certain areas. Some Leeds fans don't seem to be think he maybe needs a rest or think he needs to be replaced for a wee while. Is Click? What would you say about him, Shaun?
I think he suffers in the absence of Calvin Phillips. And to pick up on the point that both James and Debbie made about Calvin dropping into a back line when we played sort of 5 at the back kind of approach, I genuinely feel he needs Calvin Phillips playing behind him. And I think the balls he receives from Calvin Phillips playing there, he's always on the front foot when he receives the ball from Calvin Phillips. He's always looking, he's spinning, he's turning, he's kind of heading towards goal. He's got, he's facing the goal. I think that the last couple of games, when he hasn't had perhaps that behind him, he's playing facing his own goal, and I think he's playing a lot of balls backwards to the fullbacks rather than forwards to the wingers. I like the guy. I know a lot of people think he needs a rest, but then you're looking at where we are as a squad. I genuinely feel that 90% of us, 95% of us, will know that team for tomorrow, and he may spring a surprise. He's playing what we all believe, and I believe he believes, are the best 11 people that he's got available to him. And other than an injury to Rafinha, I generally feel that we all know the team for tomorrow. Who do you replace Click with from the existing squad? Who do you give him a rest for?
The only player you could play at the moment is Jamie Shackleton. There isn't another player, but again, he's probably not the same sort of guy as Click.
No. Do you know what, James? I mean, I've watched a lot of Jamie Shackleton, as we all have. I genuinely don't know where he plays, what position he plays. I watch him in the I watch him in the under 23 games, and when he perhaps not so much this season, obviously, but last season, he'll play right back, he'll play centre of midfield, he'll play in that 10 role, he'll play in the 8 role. I've got no idea where he plays. In the same way that you look at the 11 that will start tomorrow, they've all got what you might call, with the exception probably of Stuart Dallas, they've all got a position. They've all got this recognised position they play. I don't know where Jamie Shackleton plays. Does anybody?
Not in goal.
I think it's interesting you mentioned Stuart Dallas, because it feels a wee bit like he's kind of trying to, like, he's similar in that he's a real bundle of energy. He's going to give you a full shift for as long as he's on the field, and I personally think he is a central midfielder. Probably, as you said, the number 8. I definitely don't think he's a right back. What the one game, it was one of the games at the end of the season last year, and he sort of ran on like a deep run from the midfield, and he got a goal out of it.
It was
one of the games, I think.
It was Derby away. Last game of the season. Best I've ever seen him play. If I'm brutally honest.
Well, it was brilliant. That was the one that stands out for. That was the one that stands out for me.
And to be fair, he scored a brilliant goal in the last game of the season. Well, didn't he? The home game, the night we got the championship.
Yes, that's right.
He scored a similar goal that night when he broke from midfield as well.
Yeah, he did. So maybe he's the only guy you could swap Click out for. I mean, the general consensus is that you give Click a rest. I don't think he needs one. I think he'd be annoyed if you gave him one, if I'm brutally honest. And you swap it for Shaq. Who else do you put in there? The options are limited.
I think one of the sort of points that you made there was that he struggles a wee bit without Phillips. I actually think it might be he struggles a wee bit more with Rodrigo. Just in the fact that sort of Phillips' role, is to play deeper, whereas Rodrigo just in the last sort of, I don't know whether it's some of the guys said there on last week whenever we done the channel, and he says about he seems to have changed since he had that coronavirus, and he doesn't seem he just seems to be in the periphery at the end, and he doesn't seem to have the energy. What would you say, Debbie? What's your thoughts on Rodrigo's recent performances?
He hasn't sort of done it for me yet. Me and James disagree about him. James thinks he does a lot during the game and his work rate's fantastic. I haven't seen that yet, so I'm a little bit on the fence. Certainly when he is on the ball, it's exciting. It looks like he can do something, but for me, he's not getting back enough, and he doesn't retrieve the ball, and he doesn't do enough with it for me.
I would sort of probably agree with that, but I'm intrigued. I want to hear them what James makes of him. Then is to me the first question is what was he signed for? Was he signed to play in the position that he's playing, or do you think at the time he was probably signed as a potential replacement for Bamford until obviously Bamford's hit a good run in the Premier League? Where would you say?
Well, I think he was predominantly signed as a replacement for Bamford, or certainly as another option up front. Anyway, again, the first couple of games that he came in, I look at the Aston Villa game. I thought he was absolutely fantastic that night. He completely controlled the game. So there's plenty of ability there. We can all agree that he's not probably performed to the levels like we expected him to week in, week out. But this is where me and Debbie slightly disagree. I actually do think he does quite a lot of work off the ball. It does go unnoticed. I don't expect a player maybe with that kind of creativity to maybe work as much as he does. He hasn't done as much on the ball as I expected him to, but sometimes his sort of work rate does surprise me. Obviously, we want to see him on the ball more. That's what he's going to be good at. But as we said earlier in the conversation, without Calvin there, we haven't got anybody really looking for them kind of passes. Again, we'll talk about Shackleton. Look at the Aston Villa game again. Shackleton came on after 25 minutes, half an hour for Struick, and I thought him and Rodrigo in that midfield were absolutely excellent. Shackleton was finding him a lot. Rodrigo was getting on the ball a lot, and we just seem to look different. So to be fair, he's maybe not hit the levels we all expected him to, but I think once he does find his feet, so to speak, I think he will hit some high levels. It's clear he's got ability. You don't play up front for Spain as their main number 9 if you're not a good player. I'm sorry, I don't buy that. It's just obviously we want to see it more consistently.
No, I would kind of agree with that as well. What you're saying, he is obviously a good player. It feels a wee bit to me like he was signed to replace Bamford, and Bamford obviously had the great start to the season. He's maybe about a dozen goals, I think it is now all in. But it just feels a wee bit to me like it's like, right, well, we spent 30 million in this guy. We need to find him a place, and he's very out of position. And like if he's in it, and he's either a number 9 or a number 10, he's definitely not like the number 8, which is where obviously we're playing him. We'll obviously but we'll not have James and Debbie falling out about Rodrigo, so we'll give Shaun the casting. Casting vote on that.
No, let's watch him argue about it. It'd be quite funny. It'd be quite amusing. But no,
I see. We'll hear us tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll hear it tomorrow. I kind of, I think the guy's done okay. I think there's a lot more to come. I've not seen him have what I would. I mean, I forget Crawley because nobody played well down at Crawley, but I've not seen him have what I would call a bad game. I've seen a lot of good things. I get kind of enthused when he's on the ball, and I think he's always looking to make something happen. Where I slightly differ in perhaps other people's opinions, I don't think he was bought as a replacement for Bamford. I genuinely believe that despite an awful lot of other people's views, Bielsa absolutely adores Bamford. And
absolutely.
I don't think, he went to the board and said, I need a replacement for Bamford. I'd like this player, and this player has got an awful lot of ability, and this player can play in quite a few different positions. And I think, despite the fact that he's Spain's number 9, if there is such a thing, I can coach him and he can add to our team, and I can find lots of different places for him. I think he's just a good all-round footballer, and he's not pigeonholed, if you like, in this. I mean, Spain, as I said to you, pick up on my point there. Spain, cracky, don't have a number 9, do they? They don't really have what you would call a real number 9 in the way that perhaps traditionally a lot of other other countries do. They're so fluid in their movement in so many different positions, and I think he's a very, very good footballer. He's not a number 9. He's perhaps not a number 10. He's just generally a very, very good footballer, and we haven't seen the best of him yet.
Do you not think that maybe, rather than use the word replacement, maybe an additional option to Bamford, or additional option for the number 10 role, just to kind of cover those different areas where he can play? Because he can play right side, left side, 10, 9.
I totally agree, James. I think he's bought him as a footballer. The club or Bielsa wanted him as a footballer, not as a replacement for anybody, as an alternative to others. With Pablo, that's perhaps in his last season. Let's be honest about it. He may get another year out of him, but there's the role that how critical he's been to the team over the last couple of years. You're bringing somebody in that can play that role. Let's be honest about it. If Bamford gets injured and he's out for 5 or 6 weeks, 7 or 8 weeks, touch wood, God forbid, and all that kind of thing, how do we replace him with the existing squad? Do you bring do you bring Greenwood in? Do you bring Gelhardt in? Or do you play Rodrigo up front? And I think Rodrigo gives you options of covering lots of different areas on the pitch. That's how I feel. I think there's a lot more to come from him, though.
Okay. So just before we move on from the Newcastle match, I'll get you in each of you to give me a predicted scoreline. So we'll start with James.
Oh, put on the spot there. I feel like we're going to see a turnaround after last week. They're obviously not in good goal scoring form at the moment. I'm going to say we're going to win 2-0 tomorrow.
2-0. And what about you, Debbie?
I'm going to go 3-1.
And Shaun?
Newcastle or Leeds?
Yeah.
I think if we start on the front foot, we'll win comfortably 3-1, 3-0. Otherwise, it will be one of those, swearing at the TV, winning 1-0. But if we start on the front foot, we'll win 3-1 comfortably.
I'm gonna say
I won't miss climbing all those steps.
Sorry?
I won't miss climbing all those steps at the away end.
No.
Although I wish you were doing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on then from the game tomorrow. There's obviously a bit of news coming out of the club today then that there's a bit more money coming in. The San Francisco 49ers have increased their share in the club from 15% to 37%. and people are talking that it's maybe about an extra 50 million is being put into the club. So, what do you think of that, Shaun?
Well, I think it's good news. I think the money obviously won't come in. We won't just get a check written out today and a bank transfer of 50 million quid's gone into the bank, and we can go and spend it on what we want. It will be money that will come into the club over a period of time, and I think it's money that the club will use to obviously redevelop the ground, provide us with as fans with better facilities at the training ground. I think that's how the money ultimately will get spent. I don't see us going out and buying a £50 million Argentinian number 10 in the coming weeks or months. That money, the money we spend on players comes from other revenue streams, doesn't it? It comes from the TV revenue streams. It comes from the commercial element. But I think it's good news. I mean, why wouldn't anybody see it as good news? I struggle to understand that.
My one concern about it would be that the is it Parag Morath or whatever? I'm not the guy who's now the vice chairman. The one thing that would kind of concern me is there seems to be a really good balance in the boardroom at the minute with Radrazani, Orta, and Kinnear, and it feels like I just would worry in case it upsets that balance. That would be my main concern about it. What do you make of the news, Debbie?
I think it's fantastic news. Quite surprised really when it broke today. Like Shaun says, any investment in the club's got to be good. Certainly with the last sort of 20 years of investors that weren't really for Leeds United. I think obviously Radrazani's worked really hard to get us where we are, and what he's doing in the background is fantastic. I don't think we've been in such a good place for such a long time. So yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant, to be honest.
And some of the things I've seen penciled in, obviously they're talking about improving the pitch and the drainage system, and then possibly whenever sort of things get back to normal, 50,000 seats in Elland Road. What would you make of that if that was where the investment went to, James?
I think it'd be money well spent, to be fair. And as Shaun and Debbie have both sort of touched upon, Elland Road itself needs quite a bit of TLC, shall we say. Certain parts of the ground are very run down. And I think, again, with the 49ers, they have been proven to sort of enhance the supporters' games, etc., or the experience of the games anyway, certainly better facilities. So I think the money will definitely go towards the new drainage system that's happening. That will take 14 weeks apparently, which obviously I'm not sure how that's going to work during the summer, as obviously 14 weeks we don't get that kind of break. And just about the training ground, I'm still hearing that they're obviously looking at building a new training ground closer to Elland Road, which again that kind of money could be used to do that. I do think Thorpe Arch is a very good training facility. I think that's probably one of the better things that we have got, but obviously, Mr. Bielsa and the board want to move the training ground closer to Elland Road, and you can understand that. You can understand, why they want to bring it closer. But I think any kind of developments at the grounds, again, you can't really complain because there are some tired-looking spots around the ground.
Yeah, isn't the guy? Is it how you pronounce it, Joe? Is it Parag? Is he not on the board as it is at the moment? I think he now become vice chairman, doesn't he?
He was on the board. He's been on the board since 2018, but he's sort of obviously a bit more influence with the bigger fair, so he is now vice chairman. Yeah. But it'd be interesting to see.
I think going from that to being on the board to
right kind of in the midst of it. Yeah, I know as you said there about the facilities and stuff. I know they did. The 49ers obviously they made a big move. I think they went. Is it Candlestick Park, and then they moved to the stadium at Santa Clara, which was I believe it's one of the best in the world. So they're obviously they've got their fingers in the pulse there. But I think it is. It's good that the club are attracting investment. Do you know, as Debbie says, like a lot of the investment we have had, there was always seemed it felt like there was an ulterior motive behind things, and it's just nice to have somebody, you know, pulling, you know, for our corner, and ultimately. I'm looking at it as well, and I'm thinking, like, if they're talking about 22%, and it's like roughly around 50 million, so you're roughly valuing the club at like 200, somewhere between 200 and 250 million, like, and it's obviously, I think they were saying Radrazani like bought it for less than 50 maybe. So it's obviously it's gone, you know, it's gone well under his ownership. So I am keen to keep him involved as much as possible, and it does seem that he wants that. I see as well he was talking about opening negotiations with Bielsa as soon as possible. So what like how long do you think that we can keep Bielsa for? Like, he's already been at Leeds more than he's been at any other job he's had. Like, how long is he, like, obviously he's a long way from home, but you know, he is just pure football, like, and obviously at his age, it's a wee fear, but it's just, I just want him here for as long as we can have him. You know, how long would you say, Shaun? Like, do you think he's going to keep for another couple of years?
I hope so. I think you hit the nail on the head, Gerry. He lives and breathes football. His family are still back in Argentina, aren't they? I believe he's still living in the flat in Wetherby. I'm guessing he's still walking to the ground every day, or the training ground every day, and doing all the things he's done since he got here. I think he can stay here as long as he wants to stay here, and nobody really knows. You can't second guess the guy, can you? Nobody knows how long he wants to stay. He'll walk in one day and say, "I'd like to leave next month, please." That's the kind of thing he'll do, probably. And he'll, you know, as sad as it is, he'll go. But I think he'll. I'd love to see him stay on forever and a day, you know, in some form of role with it in the club. And you know, there's somebody else that one of his protégés is now, you know, he's managing the team, and he's kind of in the background doing a little bit of whatever it is that he wants to do. But you know, I don't think he's that sort of person. I think he's the sort of person who wants to be on, you know, sitting on his haunches on the touchline and doing that until whenever he wants to pack it up. I think I genuinely think he'll do next season. I'll be astonished if he doesn't do next season. After that, depends where we finish, where we're going as a club, I think.
I would sort of agree with. I think you have to, like, it kind of shows how stable things have been sort of in the boardroom over the last couple of years, with the fact that you look at like all the jobs that he's had, he tends to like just throw the head up. Like, once they disagree with something that he wants to do, that's him gone. Like there was the Lazio job, was he 24 hours or 48 hours or something he was there. Like, how much do we back him, James? Like, do we, if he wants like big money invested in the team in the summer, do we go with it and potentially put ourselves at risk, or do we draw the line?
To be honest, I don't think he strikes me as the kind of guy who says, I want X amount of pounds. He's more of a guy, I think he'll say, right, I need this player or a player in that position, or I need that area strengthening. I think he actually got a good relationship with Orta, in the sense of he'll say, maybe in the summer, before the summer, these are the areas where we need to strengthen. I think we all sat here know that maybe a goalkeeper, a left back, and a central midfielder certainly pivotal for our summer business. And I can just imagine Bielsa being the type of guy who says, get me players that I want for that position. I can't imagine him saying, I want 150 million to do this, or I want 100 million to do that. It just doesn't strike me as that kind of person. I think the club deserve a lot of credit as well. They have bent over backwards for him to keep him. As you said, he's had a lot of falling outs with other clubs, sort of short tenures, because he hasn't got his own way. I just think that Leeds as a club, Leeds as a city, it just works for him. I don't think he'll leave because of his age, or even leave because of his family being at home. That doesn't seem to really bother him at all. I just think it will be when he feels the time's right to move on, he'll feel the time's right to move on. I'm sure he'd like a stint back at Newell's Old Boys. They're his club. But again, I'm like Shaun, I'll be very surprised if he wasn't here next year. and then maybe another year after that. But I do think would be sort of pushing us. Look, maybe with Bielsa to have him any longer than that. But again, I'm like you guys. I'd love him to stay. I'd love him to stay forever, but it's just not going to happen. But again, I don't think that will be decided on things like money or or family. I think it will be done on basically if he gets his own way to a certain degree, which as we see with Thorpe Arch and the ground, etc., etc. There's been a lot of changes been made over the 2 years that he's been here that obviously benefited the players, benefited the fans, and it just seems to work. Everything about it seems to work. And just going back to the question about the boardroom, and obviously him being involved in more decision making, I actually don't worry about that because I think they've got a really good relationship. Hence why they've come on board a little bit more. And I just think between the two of them, I think maybe he respects what we do, and I think maybe we respect what he does. And I just think again, it does seem to work. And as Debbie touched on earlier in the video, I think the club as a whole, certainly off the field, is in the best state it's been for many a year.
Definitely.
I think just like the last sort of 16 years of just automatically built a pessimism into us, and it's more like it's been so good over for the last two and a bit years that he's been here that you're just kind of like feel like what like something's going to come here and someone's going to like it's been too good for a long time. What do you think on Bielsa's sort of time here, Debbie? Do you think we've still got a good few years with him, or do you think that we're maybe into the sort of period where he might be thinking about moving on?
I'm hoping he's not thinking of moving on. He's been a saviour for us, to be honest. Two sort of times where I felt nervous when he called the press conference. When the Spygate thing came out and he did the press conference. Obviously, I think I was driving home from work and there was going to be a press conference and it was like, oh my God, he's leaving. I can't believe he's going to go, sort of thing. And then obviously all the Spygate thing came out. And then obviously when we did get promoted, it was a few months before he'd sort of commit. There was nothing coming out of the club that he was going to sign. I was quite nervous that he'd done the job and then he was going to leave. So again, but I think the guy is just so relaxed and so happy at Leeds. I do think he's fallen in love with the club and the supporters. I think, like James says, I don't think he's one of these managers that demands things. I think he talks through the things. And I think he's got a really good carry on with the club, with Radrizzani and Orta and Kinnear, and I think he loves the fans. I'd love him to be here, hopefully next season, when the fans are back in the grounds, because I think, Leeds hopefully in the Premier League still, and the fans there will be absolutely amazing. Obviously, we're all missing out now, and I think, I'd love him to stay as long as he can. I think, for me, I don't think he'd go anywhere at the moment. I just hope his health-wise, he stays fit and healthy. Hopefully a few more years. Yeah.
Just interesting point actually about the contract in the summer. I don't know how you guys felt, Gerry and Shaun. He seemed to be at Thorpe Arch every single day, as Shaun said, walking from Wetherby every day, always in his tracksuit. There was never, although we all wanted him to sign, and I think we all felt that bit of anxiety that he hadn't put pen to paper, but the fact he was taking the training every day, the fact he was around the club, the fact that the club kept saying it will get done, but I think the press conference for the Liverpool game, we all just had a big sigh of relief when he'd said that he'd signed on the dotted line. It's a shame we couldn't maybe tie him down to a 2-year contract rather than that 1 year rolling that it seems to be, but it seems to be the way that he does things.
I think if you tied him down to a 2-year one, James, anyway, and he decided next year to walk away from it, he'd just walk anyway. He will decide when I think he wants. Yeah, he'll decide when he wants to go. He could sign a 4-year deal, which would, he could leave after 12 months if he just felt, I've done my best and I'm going to hand it over to somebody else now. But he's just, can you even begin to imagine us? Thankfully, I was away on holiday, going to Old Trafford and getting Dick 6-2 and not wanting to sack the manager afterwards. I mean, seriously, not since Don Revy's been the manager has anybody gone to Old Trafford and got dick 6-2 and not, 30,000-40,000 Leeds fans basically, suggesting in some form of a manner, sack the manager. I mean, we just came away from it and just shrugged the shoulders, thought, right, who are we playing next, didn't we? I mean, I did. Anybody else? Disappointing, but hey, never once thought in a million years. The managers. Don't get me wrong. I sometimes question in my own head what on earth he's doing, as we all do probably, and we're probably all entitled to do. But probably somewhere in the back of his mind, there's a mad rationale for doing so, isn't there? I don't know. But he's got enough credit in the bank with me anyway.
I think the long short of
interesting point actually you say, because
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say that it's quite interesting what you say, Shaun, about that, about the sometimes questioning. I do see a lot of people say, oh, you can't question him because he's Bielsa, or you can't say this because it's Bielsa. I do think anybody's open to criticism. We all know, he's been a god for us the last 2 years. He's turned the club around. There's no doubt about that. But that doesn't stop you maybe some games thinking, why has he done that? Why has he done that? We need to maybe show a little bit more respect here. Why did he make the 3 subs at half-time against Crawley? It's just human nature to ask them kind of questions. I don't think there's anything wrong with even questioning the great Bielsa. I really don't.
No, I totally agree with you. Totally agree. Yeah.
Just
okay, so
no, don't piss him off, James, will you? So he leaves.
No, I won't do that.
all the board are all behaving themselves and all do it, bending over backwards, and there's James. It's just we're going to just annoy him and get him. He'll throw the toys out. But before we finish up, then we'll just have a quick brief chat about the rumours and the stories about high levels of salty tears in the Thames, West London there, with the news that Frank Lampard has left Chelsea. I take it we're not sympathetic.
No.
Absolutely not.
No, it's up there with. No, I've got no sympathy whatsoever. I have to be careful what I say. No, I genuinely think I can't remember. I'm trying genuinely to think of somebody that you can compare it with who has become a manager. What now? For what he had 18 months of two and a bit years, hasn't he? Yeah, 2 and a bit years. Yeah, and 12 months of Derby. And somebody who lacks humility in the way that he does. He's arrogant and a sense of kind of self-entitlement. I generally can't think of anybody in a similar vein that's currently managing a football team. Such as he's got this sense of self-entitlement because I was a very good footballer and I played for my country. I won a lot of trophies, so therefore you respect me for that and nothing else. I can't think of anybody else like that. I genuinely can't. Right.
I think when he got that
Can
Chelsea.
you just clarify what you mean about him, Shaun?
Sorry. Say that again. Sorry, James.
Can you just clarify your feelings on Frank Lampard for me?
Yeah. I think they would be a lot longer than 7 o'clock though, probably.
I think it's quite interesting that it feels like whenever he went into management, he took obviously the Derby job and then he got that Chelsea job. So it kind of feels like there's nowhere for it. Like you can kind of see like John Terry went to Aston Villa, was assistant for a while. Like he'll maybe go and actually learn the game and then go into coaching. But it just felt like Lampard, it was just like, right, I've got 3 years to do everything that I'm wanting to do in management and I just want to get it all done. Like he was nowhere near qualified to take that Chelsea job and he got the job. In fairness to him, I thought he done okay in the first season. He got them 4th, got to the FA Cup final. But this season, like the whole structure of the club, like they went out and spent all that money. They spent far too much money on too many players. If you're going to be like go out and buy 2 or 3 players, but they went out and signed far too many, and he just hasn't. Like, he didn't there was too many changes. I was looking at it earlier. He used 27 players in 18 games or something so far. Like that's ridiculous. It's like the players need continuity. Like from a Leeds perspective, you've seen the game against Crawley, and certain players that weren't playing regularly, are good players and they're better than the players that Crawley have. But the lack of games was hurting them, and I think that that's a lot of what Chelsea's problem was. But I just think, like, it wasn't that long ago that Twitter was full of Bielsa's nominated for World Manager of the Year or whatever it was, and there's Frank Lampard sitting second or third or first, wherever he was in the Premier League at the time. English managers being ignored again, and then we're sitting here 6-7 weeks later and he's been sacked. I just think it's funny, to be honest.
It's not unsurprising though with Chelsea as a club, is it?
It's interesting again about we actually got the job. Go on, you carry on, Shaun. Sorry.
Sorry, Joe. I was just going to say it's not unsurprising. Not unsurprising, is it, with Chelsea as a club just doing it? You just look back at the people. What was his name? Former player. They won the Champions League and they gave him the first 3 games of the season.
Roberto Di Matteo.
Yeah, Di Matteo. What did he win? Probably won about 60-70% of his first 5 or 6 games the following season, and they sacked him. It's just Chelsea as a club. But again, Chelsea as a club need to look at themselves and say, well, why did we appoint this guy in the first place? Was he the only one available, only person available, and they've been sitting there waiting for the guy at PSG to get the sack, and then they bring him in? It's just Chelsea as a club, isn't it? And it's funny. And again, just one other point really is that, do you generally think that Frank Lampard went to the Chelsea board and said, I'd like this player, that player, this player, that player, and if you can get me those players, I can turn this into a Premier Championship team, a winning team? I don't believe for 1 minute he was responsible for Timo Werner and all these other players that they went out and spent 270 million quid on. Is the club buy them and say, there you go, Mr. Manager, there's your players, get on and play with them? That's the way I view it. I don't know whether I'm wrong or not, but it's the way I see it from the outside looking in.
I think there's two.
Putting on from your point with regards to obviously why you got the job in the first place. Chelsea were actually under a transfer embargo at the time, wasn't they? That's maybe why they couldn't get anybody else. What kind of manager would have want to come in when they couldn't spend or sign their own players? And as you said, Gerry, he did do pretty well early on in them first few months, sort of bringing the young players through, Tomori, Mason Mount, just to name a couple. But then I think once they was able to spend again this summer, as Shaun rightly said, I'm pretty confident in saying that I don't think Frank Lampard said he wanted this player, that player. I think Chelsea went and got the players who they thought could improve him. And then it was talk in the summer that they was looking for a German coach anyway. But obviously they signed a fair few German players and they wanted the German-speaking manager. I honestly don't think, had Chelsea been under a transfer embargo, Lampard wouldn't have been appointed 18 months ago. I really don't.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
I think there's 2 interesting points about Chelsea at the minute, and it's obviously, as you said, James, they wanted this German-speaking manager. Now, the first point is that these 2 Germans, obviously Werner and Havertz, that they signed, and I know Rudiger's already there, but is the answer to get the best out of 2 German guys who are struggling to settle in the Premier League to bring in another German guy who's never been in the Premier League before? Point number 2 is Chelsea as a board are very, they're quick to rush into sacking people and stuff. Thomas Tuchel has shown on his two major jobs. Borussia Dortmund, he was sacked 3 days after winning a cup because he fell out with the board, and at PSG he fell out with the board and was sacked 3-4 months after getting them to their Champions League final. So to me, it's only going to end one way. It's just like, how long does it last, and then who's next? It's not a good way to be running things.
Disaster.
100%.
They'll probably win a few trophies in between doing it, though, won't they? That's the thing that winds me up about it. It's just that You know, they'll carry on buying all these top quality players. They'll get a manager in that just kind of, you know, crochets them together for a season, and then they go off and win the FA Cup. You know, they're still in the Champions League, aren't they? You know, they'll probably get a nice little draw through the semi-finals or something of that. And it's just, I don't know, it's annoying and frustrating, and maybe there's a slight element of jealousy there. I don't know, but it just winds me up quite a lot. So,
That admit to that, Shaun.
I think it is, obviously, you know, it's easy to be jealous of, you know, a club that's spending the amount of money that they are, and, you know, ultimately, you know, if Leeds are going to, what we need to do is we need to take the money that we get from this season in the Premier League, use the money, invest it wisely, come back the next season and improve, and just gradually improve. And if we keep improving and we keep matching Bielsa's ambitions, we'll hopefully be going good places, and hopefully it'll not be too long before we have a trophy in the bag as well.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, the game tomorrow night, so we're 23 hours away from the game. Hopefully I'll maybe have a word with a few people, and we'll maybe try to do something after the game. But for now, my massive thanks to Shaun, James, and Debbie for coming on and talking Leeds. It's always good to get talking to fellow Leeds fans, and hopefully, you know, the people that are watching it enjoyed it. And, you know, sort of any questions for future episodes, you know, feel free to get in contact. But for now, thanks to the guys for joining me, and thanks to everybody that watched, and we'll be back again soon. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Gerry. Cheers, James. Cheers, Debbie.